Alright folks, in this video we're going to take a look at the Ayaneo Flip DS. This is Ayaneo's foray into the more retro themed consoles that evoke a sort of nostalgia that people have for older generation of devices that people can't buy anymore, such as the Nintendo 3DS or the DS itself. What's special about the Ayaneo Flip DS is that it's the only x86 device currently available that has dual screens, and while it may look like a gimmick, it's definitely very useful once you find the proper apps to use the dual screen to its full capacity, putting HUD elements of games into your lower screen. It is also useful for managing your TDP controls, which comes by default. It has a number of settings over here where you can see your FPS, your wattage, fan speed, memory usage, etc. A bunch of useful things like the quick assistant, which gives you shortcuts to turning on your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. You might want to turn off your Wi-Fi on the fly while you're playing games, so you save battery that way. Or you might want to take a screenshot. You can also use it to record video. There is a feature where they're going to implement keyboard support in the lower screen. It's not currently available, but a new update will come out and they're going to implement that. So those are the very basic features that you get out of the box that is available right now. I'm sure when the device is released, by the time people get it, they will have the keyboard feature. Now this device, it has some quirks. First, it's expensive, so this is not something you should buy if you're on a budget or if you are just getting into x86 gaming. This is more for enthusiasts who like the nostalgia factor or something to just try to tinker with, because it's a very tinker-friendly device. It's more for people who like to play around and try different ways of setting up their games or playing GBA games on the lower screen and watching YouTube on the upper screen. It has the most commonly used chipset, which is the 7840U, and I'm sure if you look online you'll see it's been tested to death. You can find a bunch of videos of all the games that would play. I'm playing Ghost of Tsushima right now. There are a few games I'll show off and the features that I use while playing later on in this video. So I'm going to get into the physical form factor of this device and why I wanted to make a review. I haven't done one in a while because I wasn't that excited, but this one really excited me. So first, this is a bit of a hefty device. It's 650 grams, so it's a bit heavier than the ROG Ally and of course the Steam Deck as well. And at first, when you get this device, if you take a look at it from the side, you won't feel very comfortable holding it because it takes a little bit of getting used to, since the weight is always balanced on your fingers. One of these fingers, depending on how you hold it, it's always going to get balanced over here. And because of how the screen is in this clamshell, it is more top heavy, so it always pulls the device backwards, and when it does that, the weight is always rested on your finger, and that kind of hurts. But over time you can overcome this challenge by holding the device with spread fingers. So what you want to do is, ideally you want to spread your fingers, and when you spread them it equalizes the weight so you can carry it much more comfortably. I'm not saying that it's very comfortable to hold for a longer period of time, but you can get used to it. And when I talk about holding it this way, this is more akin to using the facial buttons and the left analog stick. So this is for retro gaming. If you're going to do retro gaming, you don't need your fingers to click on the trigger. So you can comfortably put the pressure right over here instead of your palm. You can put the pressure over here, hold it, and comfortably play for a longer period of time. The problem happens when you try to play modern games like first-person shooters and all that stuff, because you're going to be using both the analogs. When you do this, automatically your fingers are going to go back into that position. and the weight is going to be pretty unbearable after some time. You know, mostly at 30 minutes to 35 minutes, you're going to feel it. So the only way that I found to comfortably hold this is to start like this, and whenever you need to, keep shifting this finger back and forth. That way you can try to maintain some sort of comfort with the weight, because it is a hefty device. Once you get used to it and shifting your fingers around, you do get a better sense of how to use this device. Another thing, this by default doesn't come with any sort of kickstand or anything like that, so it's always flat. And the best way to play this device is actually holding it right like this, because all your weight is rested down. You know, you don't have to worry about holding the entire heft of the device. But it doesn't come with a kickstand, so you gotta buy one. I have a cheap one over here. It just sort of, it's right here. Wait, get a good angle. So this is a cheap kickstand you can get, and you can rest it very easily and you can play it. Kind of like playing Kid Icarus, if you've played that on the 3DS. It's a similar kind of setup, and it's very comfortable. When you do this, it's the most comfortable setup. I did this for my GPD WinMax 2 as well, and that worked out. The other thing I wanted to go into is the mouse. So by default, let me just minimize this. By default, this mouse is very jittery. It's not a very smooth experience. Whenever you try to move it, you know, it registers sometimes, but then again sometimes it just doesn't go all the ways. As you can see, it's stopping. It's not a smooth motion. That's primarily because this is an IR sensor mouse. It's an older style. It's not a nub. A nub is much better, but I don't know, they've gone with this sensor. It's okay for some cases where you need to make a very precise movement. It's useful. You can't play games with it for sure. But luckily iSpace has the mouse mode, and it's always active by default. And if you hold the start and select button together, it will activate the mouse mode. It's not doing it right now because I'm in game. When you're out of the game, it will activate the mouse mode, and you can easily use this joystick or this one to control the mouse. In the future, when the update comes out, I think in June, you will be able to use this touchpad as a mouse as well, which is a very, very good idea. Some people say this screen gets hot. I did not notice that. It doesn't get very hot for me because I play at 21 watts. And most of the games I play, Starfield, Ghost of Tsushima, it doesn't really heat up my device that much. I didn't have this issue. Also, I have a custom profile where I keep the fans to the max. The max is around 5,000 RPM or somewhere around that. So I keep it around the max. The temperatures are usually good while gaming, 61 degrees Celsius to around low 70s. That's the worst case scenario that I get. Another thing is the layout. Now, if you look at let me just look at this. So this is the Ayaneo Air 1S, and this is the perfect device for me personally, because I am a PS Vita fan. For me, this is the ideal device. It has a good size. It has an OLED screen. But what I want to primarily talk about is the layout. So in a traditional console, like let's just say an Xbox 360 controller, not a PlayStation controller, because that one has both the thumb pads on, you know, the center. So off-center analogs. Now off-center analogs work great when your device is, you know, horizontal. They work great because you're holding the device. You have that freedom of motion. You know, you can freely move your fingers, and you can, you know, control both portions of the device. But when you're in a clamshell, and this is something I think GPD early on during I forgot the name of their Android one. They had an Android one. I think I reviewed it a long time ago. So they figured it out a long time ago that you can't use this layout for a clamshell. It just doesn't work. primarily because it's too close to the edge. As you can see over here, it's too close to the edge. Because your grip is here, every time you want to use this analog stick, while you can use it, you're going to pressure your palm into this device. It's going to just like penetrate inside. It can be pretty annoying at times. Not all the time, you can get used to it, but this is just not a very ideal setup for dual analogs. In a clamshell, you should always have your analogs dead center. This is the proper position for analogs on a clamshell. People might disagree, but I can say it with my experience that I would prefer something with the analogs dead center. Something like the GPT Win 2, not the Win Max. The Win Max is a completely different device, so the analogs on that are placed awkwardly as well. But it should be center. So this way you can control your game this way, and easily your D-pad and your face buttons, they're easy to access. You can just switch back and forth. So that's one complaint I have. I've gotten used to it, but for the most part, it's okay. The D-pad. Some people don't like this D-pad because it's a bit shallow, but personally, I love this D-pad. This is one of the, I'd say top 4 best D-pads I've ever used because it's very precise. Every time you click, you see that sound? I mean, you hear that sound. There. It has the perfect click. So I want tactile feedback on my D-pad. I need it. That helps me when I'm, doing moves and stuff. There's no diagonal issues with this. So every time you roll, you're going to get that feedback. It's pretty good. The keys are also very good. The face buttons, I mean. They are not too protruding so that they don't harm the screen. They don't protrude too much. They are flat, but they also have a click to them. So you do feel them perfectly. So I have had no issue playing retro games and games that use the D-pad often. So for me, this is a good implementation of the D-pad and the face buttons. I would prefer these kind of face buttons over this. This has too much travel. This is crap. This is not something anybody should want. So I'm not sure why they implemented the buttons this way, but this is just how it is on this device. It's a good one, but the buttons suck. I prefer short travel and an immediate click response to the buttons. Then we can go on to speakers. So this device has down-firing speakers. Now, out of the box, I don't know how the release version is going to be, but out of the box, the speakers aren't tuned very well, so you have to go into your Realtek. I think I have it over here somewhere. So let's hope it opens Realtek somewhere. Okay, I've opened it on the lower screen. So once you go into your speaker settings, so there you go. Oh, it's a lot of reflection, but yeah, there you go. So okay, there's a lot of dirt for some reason, but there you go. Okay, so you have to kind of set up your speakers. You have to tune them a little bit. This is my tuning. It got reset a little bit, but I could just go back to it. So there you go. That's my setup. That gives me the best sound. It does have a good amount of bass. Not very boomy, but good enough for games, and it has a good amount of treble, which is very important in games. If your speakers don't have treble, you're going to have a horrible time playing first-person shooters. It's going to suck. So that being said, the speakers are okay. It does have a fingerprint reader. I think I've never used it. I wouldn't want to put my fingerprints on this for obvious reasons. And the other thing I want to talk about is the fan noise. Now, the fan is running at max, almost close to max. And you can hear it. So it might sound a little bit loud, but it's not that loud. while you're playing games, because most of the sound is covered up by the game itself, so it's not really much of an issue while playing games. So as you can see, I'm going to do a continuation, give you an idea of what it sounds like when you're actually playing the game. Alright, so I can't really play this while, recording, but you get a good idea. It basically covers up the sound, so that's not an issue. Lastly, I would like to go into specs. So the specs are, as I said, it's the 7840U. It's been tested to death, so I'm not going to do any tests. There's really no point to it. You can find entire channels devoted to that. Now these specs, this one specifically has 32 gigs of RAM. That may be useful in some games, but I don't see much of a difference unless you're playing a very specific game. It does come with 2 terabytes SSD, which is an M.2230, a smaller SSD, which is pretty good. They are getting cheaper, so you can easily buy those. And the screen specifically is very, very good. This is a very good IPS screen. I have an OLED screen over here. This is an AMOLED screen, and I can honestly say this one is just as good as this. The only difference is you can just have a slight amount of gamma seeping through. Gamma meaning like a little bit of that brightness, that IPS screens have, the over brightness. It seeps in a little bit, but it's so less that you barely notice it unless you're playing in a completely black background. But for the most parts, the color does pop. It pops on this, it pops on this. Pretty good. So the screen is excellent as usual. It's one of the reasons why I prefer to buy Ayaneo devices, is they choose very good screens. Unlike some other companies that use very shitty screens, and I've just stopped buying those devices. So the screen is implemented well. The upper screen is at 1080p. The lower screen is, I think, around 960. You don't need to worry about that because mostly you're going to be using the lower screen for either 3DS, DS emulation, or looking up guides. It's very easy to use Chrome and just scroll through things over here. I think I could show you. Alright, so I have my mouse mode on, so I can easily go through dragging my window. For some reason I'm not able to do that now. Oh, there you go. So there you go. So I have my window down here, and I can look up game guides, etc. The keyboard does open down below, so I'm sorry, I'm not connected to the internet. It's alright. You get the idea. You can use game guides and all that stuff. You can look at stats. It's very useful. Anybody who tells you the second screen is not useful doesn't know what they're talking about, because this is extremely useful. And one of the reviews does mention an app called Always on Top. I think that's the name, or On Top Replica. So On Top Replica, I have it open here, and I'm going to share a bit of the clips that I use this with. Basically what it does, it replicates everything over here down here. But not only that, it can replicate a certain portion and full screen it over here, so your HUD elements from different games it's very useful for that. It's also useful if you want to zoom in while playing first-person shooters. So pretty useful. You should definitely have this app. It's free. You can get it on GitHub. It's a very, very useful app. Now, getting into the vibration motors of this device. The vibration is actually pretty subtle. There were some videos that say the vibration is too much. I didn't notice that. It wasn't too bad for me. Maybe it was the setup, so I keep mine on full, I think. Let's just go here. So I keep mine on high, and I didn't have an issue. Handheld companion is something you would require if you want to use gyro. It's not fully implemented on this device yet, but it does work. So if you want to use gyro, you're going to have to download Handheld Companion, which is another app that you can find over on Discord or anywhere online. It's useful for all handheld devices. So this covers pretty much what I wanted to say about this device, and I'm pretty excited about it. My only gripe is that it doesn't come with a kickstand. This would benefit greatly if it came with a kickstand. You can buy a cheap one online. It's not difficult, but a kickstand is very necessary, because most of the time you might be playing this on your bed, and every time you keep it down it's going to get very hot because it blocks off the ventilation over here. So a kickstand is something essential. I didn't talk about the ports, which I probably should. So this has an Oculink port, this is a useless port. I don't think it's useful if you are going to play this handheld, because once you plug this in, you're going to need a second wire to power this device and your GPU to play games on it. This is only for a desktop. It's more useful if you keep your device and then you want to plug another cable and charge it and play it on a monitor. I don't know why anybody would want to buy something like this for that, but for a handheld, the Thunderbolt ports are great. They work fine. You can play most of your games on 30 to 60 FPS at 720p, which is good enough for 90% of the games. So if you have like a 4070 eGPU and you plug in your Thunderbolt, chances are you'll get 60 FPS at 720p. I mean, cover that. An Oculink port is more for a desktop, where you get minimal loss of performance when you use it externally. Internally, it makes a very slight difference, but it doesn't charge the device. So you're going to have to use two ports instead of just using one port. Another thing is it's not plug and play. You have to restart your device. So I don't think, for me personally, this is useful. It's nice that it's there for people who want to use it as a desktop, but it's not useful for me. I would have preferred a USB-A port. But it does have two ports for charging. One is a Thunderbolt, one port for charging and one is Thunderbolt. I believe the second port you could probably charge. I haven't tested it yet. And then you do have the weird micro SD card slot. It opens downwards. There you go. So you plug your SD card in this way. It's kind of odd. I'm not sure why they didn't just go with a straight up SD card, but it's alright. It's sort of like a PS Vita kind of clip to it. It does have these two extra buttons, which are you can use them for the system, but I haven't been able to map it to any games, similar to this Ayaneo Ear by default, but you can use handheld companion to map this as, you know, extra back pedal buttons or so on and so forth. So they're pretty good, they're useful. The triggers do squish downwards, and I think this is a good choice because the way you hold this device, full front pushing down triggers wouldn't work. I think it'd be very weird to do that, so sideways pushing in is much better, and it's more comfortable with the way you have to hold this device. The hinge, now I'm not sure how the release version is going to be, but it's pretty sturdy. It has 3 locking positions, so this is the full flat position, kind of like what the 3DS has. It doesn't wobble when it's here, it doesn't wobble at all. It has a mid position, which is right here. This is the one I use, but this is also the most uncomfortable position if you are actually holding this device, because it centers the weight down on your fingers. And then it has its final position, which is straight. This one, when you do it, it does have a slight bit of wobble, but it's not too bad. Nothing you'd notice unless you really vigorously shake it, but it's for the most part it's pretty sturdy. So those are the positions. Now, the use case for this, a lot of people want to play their 3DS games or Nintendo DS games, Wii U games, any system that uses dual screens, it works great. The only limitation is the DS, the emulator. It doesn't give you that full screen experience yet. I think they're working on it, but for the most part, it should be okay. You can play most of these emulators like Cemu, the Wii U emulator. Anything that uses a dual screen, it works well. Both the screens work. As a package, as a nostalgia factor kind of package, this is very good, because you can't really buy a new 3DS or a new DS. You can buy used ones, but if you want to get that feeling of retro consoles that you had when you were a kid, and you know, you just like that form factor and you want to relive that with a device that also allows you to play more powerful games, or games that require more power, this is it. This is a good one. So it's a good thing to add to your collection. But from a practical standpoint, if you want to buy this just for playing x86 games, you have better choices. That's not the point of this. The point of this is to appeal to people like me who are enthusiasts, you know, people who like collecting stuff or have a disposable income, and they just like to try new stuff. And Ayaneo is doing that. Steam Deck isn't doing anything like that. Asus isn't doing anything like that. So what I admire about Ayaneo is that they're trying, you know. They release a new device every month, but that's okay, because they're trying. They're trying to do new things, and it's always interesting. Both these devices have the same chip. This is more comfortable to use. It's much lighter. It's cool, but this has an appeal to it. I can do multiple things on this. I can't do that on this. I can't do that on a flip keyboard. So this is unique, and that's what makes it special. There's nothing like this out there. And for me personally, it's a good device. If they came down on the weight a little bit in a future revision, that would be great. I think that would make this more friendly for long-term use. But other than that, I don't have any complaints. I hope you like this video, and if you like it, go ahead and push that like button. If you dislike it,